Hello everyone. I am addressing today's video to pastors, leaders of faith groups across Canada, and of course the average everyday Canadian. I believe it's so important for you to understand what is happening in Calgary. So I did mention on Monday that the conversion therapy ban has been put into law. And so most of us are like, who cares, right? Because it doesn't apply to me. But I want to say to you who are faith leaders, it definitely applies to you and to your people. So here are the definitions. In this bylaw, businesses, or a business means a commercial, merchandising, or industrial activity or undertaking, a profession, trade, occupation, calling, or employment, and an activity providing goods and services, whether or not for profit, and however formed or organized, including a cooperative or association of persons. The moment I read that, I really felt, oh, this is about denominations and affiliations. Now you may say that's a stretch, but let me read on. Prohibited business activities. This is the conversion therapy description. It means a practice, treatment, or service designed to change, repress, or discourage a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. But it's more. It also says, or to repress or reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. For greater certainty, this definition does not include a practice, treatment, or service that relates to a person's social, medical, or legal gender transition, or to a person's non-judgmental exploration and acceptance of their gender, of their identity or development. So their exploration and acceptance of their identity and development. Well, an identity is not usually used in the terminology with heterosexuality. So I'm thinking this must be toward an LGBT identity. Anyways, advertising. In a prosecution for a contravention of this bylaw, proof of one transaction in the business or that the business has advertised is sufficient to establish that a person is engaged in or operates the business. So here's a summary conviction offense. A person who contravenes any provision of this bylaw by doing any act or thing which a person is prohibited from doing, or by failing to do any act or thing the person is required to do, is guilty of the offense under the law. The owner of the real property who is registered on the title at the Land Titles Office shall be responsible for any act of a person carrying on a business on the premises located on the property that constitutes an offense under this bylaw in the same manner and to the same extent as though the act were done by the owner. So I have to interject here. If a person walked into a building, an office building, and killed someone, shot them, the owner of the building would never be held responsible for the murder. But in this case, the owner of a building where someone like me, a therapist, is helping someone, a trained professional, is counseling someone about their unwanted same-sex attraction, the owner of the building will also be charged. So what does that mean for the church? Well, listen on. For the purposes of the bylaw, an act by an employee or agent of a person is deemed to be an act of the person if the act occurred in the course of the employee's employment or agency relationship with the person. So the employer of the individual is also going to be charged. So if a corporation, and this is where I'm thinking denominations, affiliations, church bodies, commits an offense under this bylaw, every principal, director, manager, officer, employee, or agent of the corporation who authorized, assented to, acquiesced, or participated in the act that constitutes the offense is guilty of the offense, whether or not the corporation has been prosecuted for the offense. If a partner in a partnership is guilty of an offense under the bylaw, each partner in the partnership who authorized, assented to, acquiesced, or participated in the act that constitutes the offense is guilty of the offense. You don't even have to do the counseling. You don't even have to talk to the person. You're still guilty. Any person who is convicted of an offense pursuant to subsection 1, which is conversion therapy, is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $10,000, and in default of payment of the fine imposed, a period of imprisonment not exceeding 1 year. This bylaw went into effect Monday. So that's pretty, I would say that's draconian. And I think that we need to understand just how deep this will affect the church, how it will affect just people in general. And one thing I want to say when people say, and the council actually said, oh, this won't affect churches. At the end of the 2-day meeting, so you could phone in, you could listen in, some clarity about the impact of the bylaw was achieved when one of the counselors, Councillor Cara, said this bylaw absolutely applies to churches. Absolutely. So the counselor said absolutely. And they made clear that pastoral counseling, especially on an ongoing basis, speaking events, where same-sex behavior is called into question. So things like I do. I just question, is this the best way for someone to express their sexual attraction? Is it? And what about marriage? So the ban on advertising as well through churches. Donations to churches and institutions that support traditional understandings of sexuality could be punished as well. This is Councillor Cara saying this. And the council also made it clear that anyone that spoke of marriage as being between a man and a woman and sex reserved for that institution would be subject to sanction. So, church, it is time to wake up and time to arise. Thanks for listening.